Hi everybody, I'm Delaney Gabriel and it's August 7, 2019. I'm making this video about digestion and heart disease because it's a very important health issue that affects literally everyone. So I have a very personal interest in this because I had a stroke and a heart attack when I was 32 years old and working as hearing officer at U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Sacramento. I'm now 70 and I'm in pretty excellent health, but that's because I work at it. So my primary practice is here in Santa Barbara. I'm on Carrillo Street at State Street, and I also have offices in Carmel and in Sacramento where I established my practice way back in 1984. In my practice, I use really high quality dietary supplements, and I also private label over 70 supplements to help people reach their health goals. So this cabinet here is full of some of my private label supplements, and besides that I carry about 240 different supplements just to fit the needs and address the health needs of my clients. So throughout my entire career, I've treated a really broad spectrum of health issues, and because of that, I'm considered a general practitioner. So I have specialized in holistic anti-aging, bioidentical hormones, the non-prescription kind, and lab tests focusing on the optimal lab test levels since 1991, sorry. So I've been at this for a long time. So, topic of the day, digestion and heart disease. So, heart disease is well known in the field as being the silent killer because it comes on slowly and oftentimes people don't even realize they're having any symptoms. My concern about this is in helping people do what they can to prevent it. And one of those ways is through diet, because diet just plays a really key role in health, and taking some supplements and digestive enzymes can really make a difference in that. So most people by the time they're in their 30s are just not producing enough digestive enzymes to be able to even digest a healthy diet. So you've probably met that person who eats junk food and everything he or she wants and never puts on a pound and is healthy. So that's because the difference between that person and someone who has health issues is because that person is producing the necessary dietary enzymes to be able to break down things in the diet. So what we do, rather than recommending prescriptions for things, I like very wholesome, very holistic supplements to get really to the cause of things. So that when you're, like I said, if your body is not producing the appropriate enzymes then to help digest your food, then more than likely, if you live long enough, you're going to have issues. So I've been doing this work for 35 years, and I've learned a lot along the way, and I've built my practice on a lot of things that had to do with digestion, even back in 1983 when I started working with Candida albicans. That was a big issue of that time. And then in the 1980s it became Epstein-Barr virus and chronic fatigue syndrome. So all of those things are, gosh, they're still a part of the practice and for people who come to see me. So my clients typically have pretty specific symptoms, and most of the time they don't know what caused it. They don't know that it's diet related. So I have to figure out how to determine what is causing their health issues and how to treat that. So to be able to figure that out, I look a lot at the symptoms that they know about, that they likely don't even know, as I said, are related to heart disease, but just symptoms that they show up with. So those include like indigestion, flatulence, which is gas. Sometimes it's stinky, sometimes it's not. Bloating, constipation, diarrhea. Oftentimes people tell me they feel toxic, they have headaches, maybe even migraines, and overall just feel kind of blah. Some maybe they have GERD. You probably know what that is. It's where you have digestive issues to where it literally comes up in your throat and it burns your esophagus. And then just general fatigue, depression, not necessarily clinical depression that would cause you to need to see a psychiatrist and get on some antidepressants, but just feeling sad a lot. So I collect the symptoms, and if you're making a list, I'd want you to write down your own symptoms and maybe consider some of the ones that I mentioned here. Otherwise, I rely a lot on lab tests, because people can only tell me so much, and oftentimes they've forgotten how long they've had certain symptoms. So I rely on lab test results and then looking at optimal levels to make recommendations. So for lab tests, and if you have lab tests, you can definitely check yours, and I'm going to go over some of the particular tests that I look at to make assessments. So one of the first ones that typically comes up in a comprehensive metabolic panel is called uric acid. So uric acid is the test that is used to diagnose gout. So it's a kidney function. But before people develop gout, they have digestive issues, meaning they're not digesting the food in their stomach. So that leaches into the bloodstream, and it's sort of like a really murky fishbowl in how it looks. And then it overloads the bloodstream, and then people need dialysis so that they can clear that out and still be able to function some. So uric acid is a really important test for me to determine the severity of somebody's health issue. Then another test called LDH, or lactate dehydrogenase. That's a liver enzyme. Anytime you hear something that has an ACE, ASE on the end of it, that's an enzyme. So if that number is high, then what I've seen in my practice over the years, that if it's at the high end or actually high, that means that you, or whoever it is very likely at high risk to stroke. And later on, I'm going to be giving some recommendations for how I treat those things, including stroke and heart attacks. So then a couple of really important liver enzymes. One is called AST, and the other one is ALT. And if either of those are high or toward the high end, then that tells me you have a fatty liver. And that would make a different distinction in the enzymes that I would want to recommend to help you. Then there's a great liver test called GGT, like George, Tom. It's actually gamma glutamyl transferase. And that liver test is used to determine whether someone has an alcoholic liver or is likely to have cirrhosis of the liver. But what I've learned in all these years of practice is that there are people who don't drink at all, but they have a diet of protein, like a meat protein, fish, chicken, turkey, beef, pork, whatever, and combine that with some carbohydrates, rice, even good healthy food. But when that happens, some people don't digest that because, again, they don't have the digestive enzymes in their stomach. And then what happens is that their body becomes a brewery, basically. It's converting to alcohol through the fermentation of protein and carbohydrates. So if your GGT is on the high end, then watch out for not only your alcohol consumption, but the level of carbohydrates that you're eating. Way back in the day, I talked a lot about food combining, and that was where when people had issues when they ate carbohydrates with protein, then I would have them eat protein with vegetables that were low carb, and then I would have them have rice and carbohydrates with vegetables to kind of separate the protein out from the starch, and that's successful. But again, it's because their body doesn't have the digestive enzymes it needs to break down those foods. So other lab tests to consider, one is called BUN, that stands for blood urea nitrogen, and that tells me whether or not your body is taking your protein and converting it into muscle or storing it in the kidneys. So if that number is high, that's another kidney concern that leads to a heart attack. Then I'll look at cholesterol and triglycerides, which is a long word that means fats. Then there are two really good inflammatory lab tests that I like. One is called CRP, C-reactive protein. The other is fibrinogen. And between the two of those, if those are high, it lets me know pretty well for a fact that your diet is causing the problem. And then in monitoring your lab test, you can, and making dietary changes, you can find out whether or not you're really making progress or not. So also, white blood cells and neutrophils will be high if you have infection or inflammation that's diet related, so I want you to know about that. Other than that, that's pretty much it on lab tests. So heart attacks, you know, they can be fatal, and there are a lot of other health concerns that exist from that. Like arthritis would be one to really know that, because it has itis, I-T-I-S. Anytime there's an itis on the end of something, that's an infection, that's an inflammation, more so inflammatory. So that can be caused, like arthritis can be caused from inadequately digesting your food. Diabetes. Diabetes has a lot to do with insulin. Insulin is a hormone. If you're not digesting your food there with diabetes, then taking the right kind of digestive enzyme product could be very, very helpful. Then I mentioned earlier Candida, which is like a fungal infection. If you don't digest your food well and it gets into your colon and permeates and turns toxic and rancid, that can feed fungus, which is a big risk not only for heart disease and heart attack, but to cancer as well. Other things, dementia. Who would think of dementia as being having to do with heart attacks? But it has to do with digestion. All kinds of gastrointestinal problems, things with the lungs, fatigue of all kinds, and like I said earlier, cancer. Those are big, big concerns. So when the body doesn't digest food, what happens is that the food just putrefies in the bloodstream and makes you feel really sick and toxic and like you're depressed, or maybe you think your hormones or thyroid are out of balance, when really it's just that you're toxic from the food you're eating. So good digestion is really the key to good health, and excellent digestion is the key to excellent health. So after 35 years in practice and diagnosing all kinds of disorders, I pretty much still stick to what I did when I started my practice. So digestive enzymes and probiotics haven't changed that much over time. In fact, one of the products that I have here, that's one of my favorites, Digestate. I don't think you can see this because I'm so far back from the camera, but Digestate I started using about 30 years ago, and it has remained the same product. I've tried a lot of other ones over the years, but people keep coming back and reordering the Digestate because it works. So how do I decide what to give somebody for digestive enzymes? So we analyze the diet, and then I make recommendations based on lab tests like we talked about, and then I consider your blood type. For example, blood type A, those people are more so vegetarians, and if blood type A people don't digest their food well in their stomach, then they're very prone to cancer of the stomach and colon cancer as well. Blood type A people do better as vegetarians, but if you're a blood type A person and you want to have chicken and beef and so forth, then that's when I would have you take the Digestate. If you're blood type A and you're vegetarian and not digesting well, but you don't eat meat, then I recommend this one called Digestive Enzymes, because it has the amylase, protease, and lipase to break down the majority of the food that you're eating. So with a blood type B, a lot of times blood type Bs are allergic to shellfish, So I don't really have a remedy for that, but otherwise for a blood type B, you're better off eating some meat, turkey over chicken. And if you're blood type B, but you lean more toward vegetarianism or just fish, sometimes again, you'll do fine with the digestive enzymes, but when you eat meat, again, I like the digest aid. So, and then for blood type O people, as I am, we are the O's, we're the omnivores, and what separates us from the blood type A especially is because of the amount of hydrochloric acid that we digest and that we produce in our stomachs. So if you're producing a significant amount of hydrochloric acid, you need some meat. You need something to put in your stomach for your stomach to grind away on with those enzymes. Whereas if you're blood type A, not producing those enzymes, then you would be better off not eating meat. So I hope that gives you a little bit of information about the blood type diet and how I use that in making recommendations. So other than that, after working through what people do and we decide on the diet and so forth, then I want to give you some ideas about how much to take with these enzymes. So with Digest Aid for blood type O people or people eating meat, I generally don't recommend anything in the morning for breakfast unless you are eating sausage or bacon or something in a significant amount. Otherwise, I would go with digestive enzymes. Then for lunch, again, depending on your blood type, what you're eating, and even maybe how fatigued you are. If you're eating meat, I want Digest Aid. If you're eating only a small amount of meat and a larger amount of vegetables and carbohydrates and so forth, then I go with the digestive enzymes. A stronger product is hydrochloric acid, so I use that for people who need more help with their digestion. Then this one called liver metabolism, I use this because I use this for fatty livers or for people who aren't breaking down fat. It has a really good level of inositol hexanisinate, which is a good form of niacin, and some choline and other factors to break down fat. Then for people who are gluten sensitive, I have my glutenzymes. So what I'd tell you about this is don't overdo it and don't think you can have the carbohydrates and wheat and so forth and gluten all day, every day and do well. But because I've heard back from people that they just do fabulously well when taking this. So other products that I want to talk about, I recommend probiotics for pretty much everybody. I have 2 in my private label. One is a 5 billion CFU and the other one is 50 billion. So either one of those. For probiotics, I'm trying to move along here because I'm running long on this video. So for probiotics, whichever one you use, I typically like 1 in the morning and 1 at bed. But for people who have higher needs, you may need 2 of these 4 times a day. And then for instances, like I talked about the high C-reactive protein and the high fibrinogen, if it's really a threatening kind of issue, I like this product called Boluke, Boluke. And if it's just mild or prevention, I like my private label nattokinase. So the difference between those two is the nattokinase is from soy, but if somebody's allergic to soy, it's typically not a problem at all. But what they do is they act like the Pac-Man to go into the bloodstream and digest, break down the residue and clots and that sort of thing, eat away at those in the bloodstream. So those are my recommendations there. So what else can I tell you? I'll cover more of this in another video, but I just want to make sure that you have a good idea here that so much of what you eat can benefit your health or it can harm your health if you are not digesting it well. So you can place orders online on my website, DelaneyGabriel.com. Like I said, my office is on Carrillo at State Street in Santa Barbara. And if you want to schedule an appointment or something of that nature, you can call my office, 969-3600. My assistant Shelly is normally here. And I hope you'll like my Facebook page and visit my website. And I'm also in the process of creating a YouTube channel that should be up very, very soon. So in closing, I just hope that this video has been beneficial to you. I hope I've answered some questions that you had or maybe didn't even know you had. And I just really hope that I've provided some ideas that would help you help yourself with things. So in the meantime, I'll just wish you the very best of health. Thank you.